is how do creatives live their best life?
Do you ever wish life had an undo button? Walking the balance between business and the creative life can be hard. But Matt and Shelby are here to attempt to answer the tough questions, so you don't need an undo. Presented by Made by Things. This is the CMD-Z Show.
Welcome to the CMD-Z Show. Today, I feel like I say this every time, like this is a really special show.
Every episode's special.
It is. Especially, some of these first ones that we're doing with guests. A lot of these people that we are selecting to be a guest, I know on a little bit of a deeper level than just kind of passing in the halls kind of thing, like these are people that I very, very much respect, and people that I am just looking for an excuse to have a conversation with them. They don't know that, don't tell them. But so Shelby, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine, thank you.
There we go. So today's guest, let me go back a second. The other reason that I pick some of the guests that we have are because I think that they have some kind of insight to something really specific that I think everyone needs to hear about. And our next guest, I think, holds a lot of information in that brain of his that that we want to try to unlock a little bit of. Jay Clouse, how you doing, Jay?
Excited to be here. I'm doing pretty good. I'm about to go on a fishing trip, and so I'm in a very good headspace. I'm ready to rock and roll.
Fishing trip. I have gone fishing at least 6 times in my life, and I have caught exactly 0 fish.
Whoa. Well, you got something wrong with your form.
I don't know, 6
it
times
must be.
isn't that
I
many.
don't know.
It's not that many, Matt.
It's
Go for
not.
7. Go for 7.
I will someday. Like, my kids are like, let's go fishing. I'm like, listen, we won't catch anything. It's not that much fun. I think that, like, if I did catch something, I would be so lost. I'd be like, oh, I don't know what to do. And then I would just toss it back in the water.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, you can toss it back in the water. That's a lot of people do that. Catch and release.
Do you eat them later? Is this what you do?
Depends on the trip and depends on the season and what you're catching. So we're going walleye fishing, and we have a limit. I don't know what the limit is. I don't know if it's like 2 per day or 4 per day per person.
Is that like a state law or something? Or
yeah,
what state is that?
Each state has. It's going to be New York.
Oh, okay.
So each body of water has governing rules from its state and seasons that the rules are different, right?
Huh.
So, yeah. Have you watched Alone on Netflix?
I have not.
Okay. Then I won't even go there. But yeah, it's seasonal, and there's limits involved. And if you're above the limit, you just put the fish back. Sometimes you catch a fish that is not very big, and you want to eat the fish, so you throw that back preemptively so that you're not at your limit, hoping that you will catch another bigger fish to get you to the limit.
Well, that brings me to the question of how do you best fish? No, I'm just kidding.
Perfect transition into today's topic.
We're talking about fishing. So yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on again, I think you have a lot of information in your head right now. One of the things that I find really fascinating about who you are is that you seem to dabble in a lot of different kinds of things. And it's interesting to me because since I met you, I feel like you've sort of made more of an emergence to more of the creative side of things, from more of the kind of startup or entrepreneurial side of things. And I've always found that really fascinating because for me, it's always been about trying to learn things from other industries and apply it to creativity rather than just kind of being stuck in that echo chamber and just doing things how everyone else does. So I think that you have a lot of really great insight into a lot of things. And I want to start tapping into that a little bit. Is that all right?
Yeah, totally. Open book. Let's do it.
All right. All right. So the question that we'll start with, I'm sure we're going to go to a lot of different places, but the question that I want to start with, and it's a big one, is how do creatives live their best life?
I think it comes down with just being honest to yourself about what you want. Because like if you don't know what you want, you can't optimize for it. You can't get there. So it starts with having, you know, an honest conversation with yourself with what do I want my lifestyle to look like? You know, I forget who got me to this way of thinking, but it's for the last several years, I very much designed my life and the way I spend my time to optimize for my days. Like, what will my day feel like? Because a lot of people, before they get honest about what they want, start pursuing that, they more so optimize for like these ephemeral achievements that make for really nice Facebook and LinkedIn moments. Like, I'm excited to announce that I'm officially this position at this company. And it's like, that sounds awesome. But now you have the reality of being that day in and day out. And it's not exciting to say that as much anymore. And I wanted to be the opposite. It's like, I don't really care what I say that I am. I just want to wake up in the morning and not dread my day. So I think once you figure out what that is for you, you start paddling in that direction. And more and more, you know, in the beginning, you're always going to be optimizing a little bit for like what's able to pay the bills. Like, let me get my existence covered financially. And as that becomes easier and easier, and you start paddling in the direction of what you want to do, then you start to get more opportunities to be choosy. You know, you can say like, okay, right now I'm doing A, B, and C. Kind of hate C. A and B are paying more money than they used to be, so I'm just going to stop doing C. So you're just doing A and B, and you think, you know what, I think I might want to try D. D looks pretty fun, so you start doing D, and you're like, I really like D, actually. But it takes a lot of time, so let's get rid of A. I'll do B and D for the next future. You know, and it's just this constant, like, iterating and whittling down of how you want to be spending your time until you're spending as little time as possible on the stuff that you don't want to be doing, and you enjoy your existence.
So that's definitely one of these things that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And what do you think it is that stands in the way of people being able to simply do things like that?
Well, I think part of it is that our educational system does us a disservice by not trying to flip this switch in us to begin with. In fact, depending on how tin hat you want to go, you could say that the educational system is aggressively trying to do the opposite. You know, if the schooling system is created and funded by an industrial complex that wants people to be workers and middle managers, like, they don't want you to think about this. And in fact, the more successful you are on the path that traditional jobs and work want you to be, the more you start getting attached to the amount of income you earn from a job, the more you layer on complexities and constraints of mortgages and cars and a family, you know. So the earlier in your life you flip this switch and start making decisions towards that, the more likely you are to have fewer dependencies on money. So I was lucky to start this journey in my 20s when I didn't have a family. I could live in a very small apartment. I could live very, very cheaply, and I'm a white male. So I had a lot of advantages in getting there. And the deck is stacked against most of us, and some of us even more so than others. Right. So, you know, the more you can do to loosen your dependencies and constraints, the easier it's going to be. But the more intense your dependencies and constraints are, the harder you're going to have to work. And it sucks, but it's true.
Right. I want to get a little bit into the community side of things, but I guess before I do, how do you know these things?
Trial and error, man. Like, just practice. And I write pretty consistently. And I enjoy having conversations like this, because if I'm not writing about things I know, sometimes getting asked it helps me articulate my opinions. Because I'm not really somebody that has a ton of opinions, or at least strong opinions, without being prompted. But when somebody asks me a question, I can easily kind of plumb the depths of my mind and tell you what I believe and why. No. But it's just lived experience and reflection, and also meeting other people that are on the same path and learning a little bit more about their journey. You know, like we're talking before we start recording, between the two podcasts that I have run in my lifetime, I've interviewed like 300 something people on just recorded conversations. Right. And all of those people are entrepreneurial in one way or another. So I've learned a lot about different people's paths.
So, like I said, over time, you've started to gravitate a little bit more towards that creative side and building a creative community. Why make that change? Why drift towards that side of things?
Well, I ended up even close to this world because in college, there were a couple of guys who started businesses in high school who opened my eyes to the idea of entrepreneurship. But at that time, entrepreneurship in my eyes was high-tech growth startups. And so I thought okay, so if I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I need to have some sort of app that I create that I get funding for, and then we cash out and bro down. I just thought that's what entrepreneurship was.
Right.
Slowly started to recognize that small businesses were entrepreneurs. That was pretty cool. At some point, I kind of left the startup world to just depend on myself and see how I could make money on my own. Discovered freelancing. That's still entrepreneurship. And as I discovered freelancing, I just started spending more time with people who were in the creative world, and also began experimenting with building my own products and writing my own blog and then recording my own podcast. And what I realized was I love making things. And in the startup world, I still had that love of making things. I just thought that for me to make things, I had to make software, and then I had to push that vision through a designer who would then translate that into tasks for a developer. And then by the time the thing that I wanted to have made was actually made, it was full of all kinds of compromises and things that I didn't actually want, because it was also forced to go onto a timeline of what the business needed. And so the things that I wanted to make were never what I actually wanted to make. And start entering this more creative world, I can go from idea to published or idea to created totally dependent on myself and make exactly what I want to make. And any of the compromises that I make were my decision and my decision alone. And that was incredibly liberating and exciting to me. And the people that I met that were doing the same thing just seemed happier and enjoyed themselves more and were naturally more fun to hang around because they were on the same path and they were doing the same thing. They were making things that they wanted to make because they wanted to make them. And, to your point about living our best lives, what's better than that?
Right. So over time, then you start, I don't know how intentional it was. And I guess I'm kind of curious. Again, you started building this sort of creative community. And I want you to talk about that a little bit, of just kind of leading up to building what you have and kind of where it is today.
Yeah. So I started a tech company in 2014 with a partner. We did the venture route. We raised some funding. We sold it in late 2015. Then I took a job as a product manager at another venture-backed company here in town called Crosschecks then. Now it's called Olive. And got really burned out on that because, one, I went from being a co-founder of a company to being a product manager underneath the product leader who I didn't think knew product very well. And so I was like, this sucks. I don't have as much control. I don't even have full transparency into how this business is running. I have to run things through somebody who I don't think gets what we should be doing. Screw it, I'm out. And I left, went out on my own, didn't know what I was going to do, just figured I will be fine. And started facilitating mastermind groups is the way I would put it. I called it an accelerator program for mostly creative individuals is what it turned out to be. It was this 12-week program where I would get a group of 5 people together, 5 people plus me. We would meet every week for an hour.
Every hour for a week.
We'd meet every hour for a week. We'd meet every week for an hour and talk about our creative projects. And the goal was over a 12-week period of time, we'd make a lot of progress collectively and individually. On the back end of that, because meeting once a week for an hour never seemed like enough time, I had a Slack community where it's just we can communicate here in Slack while we're not doing this. And this was 2017. Slack wasn't as big as a thing then. When we were doing these calls, I had to show people how to download and use Zoom. People didn't know what Zoom was at the time, which this all sounds crazy right now, but this is 2017. And over a period of 3 years running this business, more than 100 people went through this program. We were all in the Slack community. It was this beautiful, wonderful place. And I didn't realize I was building a community at the time. I'm using that word now, but at the time I just thought it was like I'm getting people to communicate outside of these group calls and outside of their groups. Fast forward to 2020 in the pandemic. Matt Gartland, who is local here in Columbus, he is Pat Flynn's business partner. Pat Flynn is like one of the OG online creators. He's been doing it since like 2008. He's like the inspiration point for so many people who are doing this creator thing now. They were looking to launch a membership community on a new tool called Circle. And Matt had seen how I was running my community on Slack and brought me in to consult to help them form a membership community as a paid project or paid product for part of their business. So I did that for about 8 months. Then they acquired my community to absorb those people into this community, SPI Pro, and bring me on the team full time to lead community underneath Smart Passive Income, SPI. And that kind of formalized what I was doing as community building. And I continued to get more and more interested in it, do a lot more research, do a lot more practice. Spent a year with SPI from January 2021 to the end of December 2021. And then as of this year, back out completely on my own and launched my community in March.
Wow. The one thing that I always find to be fascinating about you is the confidence that you have in what you do. It's like you have a confidence about not knowing the right answer to things. And I think it's not very common to have. And I'm wondering how that 2015 acquisition that we're talking about, I wonder how much that played into that confidence that you started to develop at that point.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, to be honest, I don't know. I haven't thought about that. It's certainly possible. I'm sure it played a role, because like it was a very early win for me. I was in my mid-20s.
Right.
And it was like, this is cool. And it wasn't like life-changing money by any means. Like it kickstarted my retirement fund because when we were running that business, we paid ourselves nothing. But yeah, it probably plays in. There's a good friend of mine that I've known since college, and he had a group of friends, and they kind of honorarily pulled me into this mindset. They called their group of friends Grupo Flexible, which I don't know is actual Spanish, but it was just this idea that like, hey, we're a group of people who we don't need to make plans, really. We're kind of down to figure stuff out and do it. And I think, honestly, like that weird moniker has been lodged into my brain for a long time because I really like that. I have basically 2 speeds, which is immediate and never. So like I'm going to respond to an email immediately or never. If somebody wants to make plans, I kind of never want to make plans, or I want you to ask me to do something like an hour from now, know? And usually that's a lot easier for me than being like, okay, let's find something for the next week. Even scheduling this, like scheduling things within a period of a couple of weeks is difficult for me because I'm hoarding that time. But in the moment when there's like free time and someone's like, hey, you want to go get a drink at this bar? Awesome. Would love to do that. So the confidence to figure things out that I haven't figured out before kind of comes from that. And I think it more so comes from my background as a product manager because you never have full information, but your job as a product manager was just to make decisions constantly and quickly based on the information that is available. So it often didn't benefit me to come up with complex decision trees in my mind or on paper based on what might happen. I just got really good at taking information that was happening and making a decision based on that. It drives my wife nuts, to be honest, because she'll want to know, like, okay, so if this happens, what are we going to do? It's like, well, let's not worry about that till that happens. Let's wait until we have all the information we're going to have and then make a decision based on that, as opposed to make a bunch of theoretical decisions, because right now I should be doing something else instead. But yeah, I think it's product management.
That's interesting. So over time, then you start building this community, you start having more and more creative people on board. I'm curious, what are some of the big things you've learned from them during this process?
I learned from the community. I learn stuff from them all the time. I mean, the great thing is, this is like the dirty secret about being a community builder. I learn as much from them as they do from me. You know, they're paying me to be a part of this digital space. And don't get me wrong, like I created that space, I manage that space, I moderate that space. It's a
Right.
ton of work. But
Right.
to me, it's just as much of a resource as it is to them. Because also within a community that your people are paying to be a part of, these people who have opted into this likely are like your biggest fans and supporters. And they also probably have the most context about you and your business as anybody who's not like your closest of friends. So within the walls of this private community, the lab, I'm able to go in there and ask feedback from these people about anything that I'm doing and learn, you know, their perceptions of what I'm doing and learn what their challenges are, because they're constantly posting questions in the feedback channel, looking for help on certain things. So, I mean, it's hard to even give that an answer. I'm learning from people every single day.
Right.
And it's
Right.
wonderful.
Is there any common sort of aha moments that people seem to have whenever they get together in this community and being able to talk with others?
I think one of the most frequent aha themes is that we're often overthinking things and over-engineering things, you know, and something that I think I take for granted that I didn't is knowledge I didn't always have was even like the business model of a creator and how to do this stuff. Like we have a new member who just joined. He's on the earlier end of the spectrum as a creator from most of the members in there. And he posted a question today, and he's like, when should I stop giving things away for free and start charging for things? Talking about like content and downloadable things. And it kind of took me aback because I'm like, why would you ever stop giving away things for free? Like you would never
Right,
stop
right.
doing that. Like, yes, you will create
Right.
paid products, but like sitting here today, business is doing better than it's ever done. And my priority is becoming more free things, you know? It's just interesting. It's hard to separate yourself from the knowledge that you've had, even understanding, you know, some of the steps along the way of getting people into your world and getting them to trust you and understand what you're about. I have just picked up so much experience and information about how to run a creator business that most people don't have. And usually when they ask me questions about it, the answer is like, you're overthinking this. Like, just approach it from this direction. There is no right or wrong answer here. People do it in all sorts of ways. You know, often I'm encouraging people to think about, well, what are we trying to optimize for here? Like, are we trying to get the most revenue out of this? Are we trying to expand your reach out of this? Like, it all comes down to what is the point? What is the purpose? What are you trying to do? And then that will change how I might recommend you go about your next steps. I know that all sounds kind of amorphous because we don't have like a specific example here, but that's kind of the themes that I see.
I think some of the stuff that I always struggled with was when you start going down a path that not many people have gone down before, you have less people that you can get advice from. Now, there's certainly hundreds of just amazing books out there in the world, but none of them really answer your specific situation.
Sure.
So it can be really tough. And there's so many aspects that go into decisions that are being made, including like, okay, well, what's your runway, right? How much money do you have to be able to make this work for you? Like, what's your current living situation? How do you budget your life? You know what I mean? Like it can go all the way back to that. And for me, it was like, you know, I was addicted to reading books because I was like, there's so much I don't know. And I just don't know. I don't have anybody to ask for any of this stuff. So a lot of it was like trial and error, but I don't know, it can definitely be scary. And there's definitely those moments where it's like, oh yeah, I'm definitely being stupid about this. I'm definitely like overthinking this. But even going back to kind of what you were saying before, like making sure you have all the information that you need before you can make a decision. I often will make decisions and like, I don't know, come up with plans for things. And I'm like, all right, this is what we're doing now. Like I'm very quick to change the direction of the ship. And I think it can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing where it's like, I don't know, you almost borderline on being distracted by the shiny object where you're like, nope, gotta go over here now. Is that something that you come across?
Yeah, I'm of a similar mind where I think the worst decision you can make is just not making one. I'm usually like,
Agree.
hey,
Completely.
let's make a decision and move forward on it. And like everything is changeable and editable and usually reversible.
Right.
But like our currency is time most of the time. So the more time that we give ourselves by making a decision moving forward, the better off we are. But one of the mistakes I see a lot of people make is in this world of being a creative, and especially being a creator, there is so much comparison that you can't help but do, because the platform and the tools that you create on are running rampant and giving you content from other people doing the same thing, usually at a higher level, because it's just being surfaced to you as a popular thing. And so you compare yourself to them. And what we don't think about enough is, am I playing the same game as this person? Because everyone has, as you were saying, a different context. So you need to choose what game you want to be playing in this world, and then align your models to that game. Models meaning the people that you're modeling after. You need to align the people that you're modeling your business after to make sure that they're playing the same game, because you can't expect the same results when there are different rules at play. And what a lot of people who are kind of scamming this world will do is they'll be like, hey, let me buy my course and I'll teach you the secrets in my 6-figure launch. And it's like, that sounds incredible.
Right.
And what they don't tell you is that their 6-figure launch had a 5-figure marketing budget, which means that, one, they had the resources to put that kind of budget into it. Like it's just not transparent and accurate most of the time.
Right. I think in a lot of cases, I don't necessarily think people are trying to scam other people by saying that, but I think that they actually believe it themselves, because they're like, oh, wow, I did this thing.
Well,
if I can do it, then anybody can do it. But they fail to see all of those little
it's
details
definitely both.
That
like, I think a
actually go
common
into it.
practice in this world is to intentionally leave things open to inaccurate interpretation.
Right.
Because you're not lying then, and you can let yourself off the hook.
Right.
But again, you're definitely leaving the space for inaccurate interpretation that will implicitly drive that person to trust you and want to buy something.
Right.
So it's a gray area for sure. But there are definitely people who also they're so far removed from somebody just getting started that they don't remember what it's like. And I'm starting to hit this point now where I'm in kind of a similar boat. I'm like, well, I mean, I kind of feel it with like TikTok, which we just started a TikTok account like a month ago, and YouTube. We just started a YouTube account 3 weeks ago. And I'm sitting there and like, oh, I am starting at zero. But I'm also still not starting at zero. Like, I can email my list of existing people and put it on social media and kind of kickstart these things. If I was starting from absolute zero, what would I do? And that's kind of hard for me to answer. I have some theories I think would work, but it would definitely be slow. Like the answer is you're still probably going to spend multiple years, like 5 years, the way that I have, kind of feeling around in the dark and finding your way there. And I don't know how much of a way around that there is, unless you have some really unique earned insight from your life already, and you're able to parlay that and put it in front of other people's existing audiences. And that's like the ultimate shortcut, but most people don't have that level of earned insight. I'm talking about like an Andrew Huberman, a neuroscientist who's been running a lab at Stanford for a couple of decades. He gets onto the Rich Roll podcast and talks about neuroscience, and people are like, who's this guy? And just blows up out of nowhere because he was given a platform of somebody else's audience, and he has a ridiculously rare set of, or very rare insight that most people don't have and can't speak to as elegantly as he can. So there is no real shortcut. His shortcut was he spent 2 decades learning neuroscience at Stanford.
Right. And that's kind of the thing I always think about. Like with me, it was a little bit different than most people's path. I was 12, 13 years old and said I wanted to do animation. And I haven't veered from that path since. It is crazy. Honestly, that's kind of part of the story of the backwards hat, right? Is that I've been wearing a backwards hat since I was 12, 13. Wow. So I just kind of, that's the part of me that I just kind of carry with me. It's weird, but So there's never anything else in this world that I wanted to be or do other than a baseball player, maybe. But
Might be too late for that one.
I don't know. Maybe I'm not tall enough, fast enough, strong enough. I don't know. But like, this is gonna sound crazy, but like, there's still a part of me that's like, you know what? If I dedicated myself to that, I bet you I could do it. I know that's crazy, but I'm like,
That's an important attitude,
that's
though,
just
for anyone entrepreneurial.
I completely agree, but and that's why like I started talking about like confidence earlier. Like, I don't know when I gained the confidence that I have right now. I know it definitely wasn't always there. Like, I don't know. I think that I think because I knew what I wanted to do, I started practicing it at a very young age. Like, I just remember so many days of just turning the Mortal Kombat soundtrack on and just drawing for hours. And then I would just play video games and then go back to drawing. So like, I was practicing so much without realizing that it was actually practice. But over time, it just gives you confidence. And I don't know, like I find it to be just as I find confidence to be just as fascinating as creativity. And I think that they're actually one and the same. And I don't know, most people don't have that conversation of both of those things together. But
I've been thinking down similar lines lately. Although I haven't been using the word confidence in my model as much. I think a lot about belief because, in the story that you're telling me, you have a goal.
Interesting.
I want to be an animator. Or in this metaphorical world, I want to be a baseball player. So you have the end state, and then you have belief or confidence that you can get there. We're like fascinated by these stories that turn into docuseries with Elizabeth Holmes of Theranos or Fire Festival or WeWork or Anna Delvey. And it's like, how could these people pull off this crazy stuff? And the answer is they believed that they could do it. They had a goal and they believed that they could do it. And in those cases, like that's the, it went wrong story. But every day people are doing the same thing and it's lauded because they had a goal and they believe they could do it and they do incredible, crazy things to get there. Have you seen King Richard with Will Smith about the Williams sisters?
Yes.
The thing that Shelby's seen it. The thing that strikes me about that story, assuming that it's true, in the beginning of the movie, Will Smith's character, the sister's dad, he had incredible belief about who they're going to be and a goal of making them go pro, and that pushed him to do ridiculous things, like just go door to door to these like white tennis pros, this is like the 80s, to ask them to coach his daughters for free. And he got told no dozens of times until he found somebody who was willing to teach one of them. And then they recorded her practices so that the mother could play those tapes and practice with the other daughter based on the tips of the other coach. Like, just crazy what a goal and belief that you can achieve it will do. But most people don't sit down to have this conversation of like, what is my goal? And then they constantly self-sabotage by not believing that they can achieve it. If you don't believe that you're going to achieve it, you're not going to take the steps necessary to do it.
Right. And this is my issue with plan Bs in this world, right? Where like, I understand that it's a safe idea to have a plan B, but I've never been a fan of them because I don't fully believe that people will give it everything that they have if they know that they can fall back on something. And that's like, whenever people ask me, they're like, oh, like, how do you go off on your own and do all this stuff? I'm like, honestly, you just kind of do it. And then you freak out for a while, but you trust that you'll think of something. Totally. Maybe it is that belief again, where it's like, that it might not be the right answer, but at least you'll go a direction. You will get in the boat and you will start moving.
I think that plays a big part of that confidence, though, is being able to have the confidence in yourself to start it and have the confidence in yourself that if you fail, you can go a different route.
Totally.
Right. And that's always interesting to me too, is like how families play a role in everyone's life, but like especially with creatives' lives, where it's like, if you don't encourage kids to create, or if you start saying like, oh yeah, it's not that great, whatever, like that has such an effect
For sure.
like later on.
Most of the time,
like,
we're looking at our parents as our first models, and we don't realize that they're playing wildly different games. Not even different games. Sometimes, even if they are playing the same games, the rules have changed a lot. You know, I was at my parents' place talking to them about how they got a loan to custom build the home that I grew up in. And they were telling me about like the interest rates they were getting on the money they deposited at the time. They were getting like 40% interest at one point. I was like, are you kidding me? And the amount they like got a loan for to build the house was in the thousands of dollars, like single thousands, I believe. So it was just like, wow, the rules have changed so much. You know, like we're playing if I'm playing the same game of wanting to build a custom home or, you know, get a loan or save for retirement, same game, same goal. But the rules have changed. You know, I can't save at the same rate. I can't use the same financial product, or I can't even try to save to the same total amount of savings and have that be enough. It's a factor of like it's a multiple higher now. So yeah, I think a lot of times parents unknowingly are in the way because like if you just all you have to do is acknowledge that like things have changed and things are different and you know, you can do whatever you want to do, but my advice won't really work because you can't really take helpful advice from somebody who hasn't walked the path you're trying to walk, you know, or come to the same crossroads. They'll do their best, they can project on it, but it's not really informed insight.
Right. That's I kind of go to this idea of education again, like you were talking about earlier, and even like just how parents are in general. And again, I think about my own story in general, and I did horrible in school. I was never really that great. I wasn't like a bad kid, but if I got C's, my mom was generally okay with that. Like as long as I wasn't failing anything. But for me, again, early on, I was like, this is not for me. Like I was social, I can talk to people, but like I just wasn't good at school. If I couldn't understand the context in which I could use this thing later on, I couldn't do it. There's nothing I could do to remember these different things. But when it came to art, like it was completely different for me. Whereas like that was the only place that I was like really excited about. Every Wednesday or whatever the day was, like that I'd have art. I was like, awesome. Like I can't wait. I'm excited about like getting into the paints and doing all these different things. But I think, I mean, especially at this time, I think it was really difficult for anyone to see that sort of potential. And honestly, it kind of, if anything's done a number on me in my life, it's that. Where it was like having a lot of people not believe in you whenever you do have those crazy ideas, where I was like, you know, I want to do something with art. I want to animate things. Because when you say that as a middle school or high school kid, you know, you usually get like, oh, that's great, sweetie. But like, you don't get people that are like, okay, cool. Like how do you want to start? Yeah. Like, you know, like you don't get anyone really helping you with stuff like that. I'm hoping that it's changed, but to me, that's, I love education, but I absolutely hate the education that most people get in our country. And a lot of it comes down to that. Again, I don't know if it's changed. I haven't been there recently.
Probably not for the best. Like, there's probably not more art programs. They're probably not more like. Right. You know. Right. You see schools that are like canceling classes and like doing less programs because they can't afford it. And like for me, I'm like, that is batshit crazy. Why we give kids the opportunity to hit each other with dodgeballs and gym, but we can't give them a paintbrush and a little bit of direction. Like I love sports more than a lot of other people, but I don't know. Every kid has their own sort of thing. And I think that time specifically should be spent. Sorry, we're really getting into this education thing here. Like every kid should have like that time to explore.
And I think that kind of goes to, I mean, we talk about education, it talks about that confidence. Whenever they don't have that chance to explore, I think that we get people that are just like, yeah, let me be a middle manager. Let me just do this thing that I know can pay
here's
me
something that I've
decently.
also witnessed, and I promise this ties in, so go on this journey with me. So when people start the creator journey, they will say, hey, I'm doing this thing. I'm starting this blog. I'm starting a YouTube channel. I'm making a podcast. I'm doing this on Instagram. They'll make that like announcement post, the way we're trained to do with jobs. People get really excited. People start following. It feels really nice. And then, in the best cases, that person stays consistent for a period of months. And over those first several months, what they see is a decline in support and enthusiasm, because the people who are initially following were people close to them, who were excited for them at that moment. But as time passes in the early on, it's hard to get in front of the audience that you want to build. They're strangers on the internet, and you got to find a way to get in front of them. In the beginning, you're just getting in front of the people that you know, most of whom are not actually your target audience. And some of those people fade away because they're not your target audience. But here's the worst part. A lot of times people will passively aggressively be unsupporting because they see you following your interests and your dreams, and it threatens their own perception of themselves, because most people haven't done that. And I don't want to say that people do this super consciously, but in interactions, they'll do the same thing, you know, where they will belittle what you're doing, or, you know, actively try to dissuade you from it because they didn't have the belief in themselves to take that same risk. And so their model is, this is not a viable path. You got to make the same compromises that I did, or you got to trade these things off the same way that I did. You know, it's like all these old systems that have basically hazing rituals, where the people who went through it just like want to maintain that system because I went through it, so you have to too. People will do that in the way that they support or choose not to support you with your work also. It's really hard for people to see, like, wow, my, you know, one of my good friends just unsubscribed from my emails. What does that mean? You know, like, or like, why does this person look at all of my stories but never like a single one of my posts? And it's really hard, but it's because most people didn't give themselves the permission to do that. And seeing you do that hurts them. And so they are not going to support you actively. And it sucks. You gotta find new models, new friends, people who support you. And that's not always easy to do either.
Right.
Yeah, I am.
Right.
I've actually
Shelby.
been having this conversation with one of my creative partners, where we have a very distinct voice. I mean, I like French New Wave and writing and very artistic, out of the box work. And a lot of times, especially, I'm based in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, very Midwestern. There's, you know, a lot of times a very particular voice, and we get pushback on some of those ideas, especially on some of the weirder ideas. And I think it's important to be able to self-reflect on where you're at, whether that be, you know, how people are supporting you, if your community is supporting you, and be able to like take the jump and not be afraid of looking for other communities too.
Yeah.
Of, oh, are there going to be other people that might understand this better? Because I think for me, one of the things of living the best creative life that I can is to find other people who understand what I'm doing.
Totally. And here's the other thing, you know, people who are sometimes not supportive that you would expect to would be, sometimes they think it's like a taste or intelligence thing. Nobody likes to feel stupid or like they don't get the joke, right? And so it's easier to just like reject that thing and other it versus admit that you don't get it. And, you know, we're artists. Like most of the time there's nothing to get, you know, and like that's hard for them to grasp also.
Right.
So, you know, I've actively tried to cultivate that in people that have been close to me at different points in my life who don't understand what I'm doing. So I love my parents. This is one of the reasons why I love my parents so much. They've never really understood what I was doing, but they've also always been wildly supportive. You know, my dad will listen to an episode of my podcast and be like, actually, you mentioned that, you know, I was paying you 10 cents per tree and we planted thousands of trees. We actually planted this many trees. It's like, why did you listen to that podcast I was on? But I love you. Thank you. And I wish more people were like that, but it's,
Right.
yeah, it's a challenge.
That's so one of the things I always think about, like bands,
Yeah.
like before they make it, they all say the same thing of like,
Yeah.
yeah, we were playing with nobody there. At one point or another, we were playing with nobody there, and it lasted for what seemed like a long time, but they kept going, and eventually people started showing up.
Same.
But like I always think about that, and I don't know. I feel like, I mean, I can relate that in some ways. I can't play any musical instruments, but there's certain events or certain things that I would do, and I'm like, okay, like if I was doing Making Midwest, like the first couple times I did that, I was like, that's weird. Like I had 40 people say that they were gonna be here, but only 12 showed up. And I think that it's like one, I'm not gonna like be mad at anybody for not going. I actually like think of it in a different way, where I'm like, they are part of the market. The market is never wrong. So it's like, if they didn't come, well then it's either I'm not doing something right. And like I'm not gonna blame them personally, but I'm gonna like take a moment here to try to figure out like, why wasn't this appealing enough for them to just be an automatic yes to coming to this? Now, that being said, like one of those events was a little a short film premiere that we did of Where Are You Now? A short film that we did. It's on our website, madebythings.com.
I was there.
And a super
I wear that
personal
shirt
story to
constantly.
me. And
I'm sorry.
You spoiled the ending, damn it. No, it's fine. And for something like that, I'm like, listen, like this isn't like a normal kind of premiere, and I didn't want to like tell everybody what it was like about, but in my mind I was like, it would really mean a lot if like we could just fill up a room with people and we can kind of share this thing, right? So we got food, we got t-shirts, we got a bunch of stuff for everyone, and I planned on before we showed anybody this film, I wanted to kind of tell the story a little bit. And I don't know. I don't know what I was expecting, and I don't know why I was expecting it, but I was like, I feel like we're going to be able to, like, we're going to have a lot of people at this thing. And I think there was only maybe less than 10 people that showed up. And I was like that, honestly, it kind of hurt. Cause it was like, man, if anyone would just, if you come to any event to support what I do, this would have been the one. And again, I'm not mad at anybody for not showing up. But again, I look over there and sitting right in front of the TV, there's Jay and your wife right there. And I got to tell you, that level of support, like I can't describe to you what that actually means, you know? I'm not crying, all right? I'm not going to cry here. But I will tell you, like, that's the kind of person that you want on your side, right? The person that shows up. Not, again, if you don't make it to the next thing, again, I get it. It's no worries. But like, again, just there's people that will show up, and there's some people that might not. And those people that don't show up, they don't, again, it doesn't mean that you can't be friends with them anymore, but it means they just had something else going on, or maybe, honestly, maybe it does mean that they're just not into what you're doing. But
Sure.
I think it's important to keep going no matter what, and being okay with hearing no or playing
sure.
to an empty room,
and
basically.
It's important to be that for people. Like, that's why I went. I could tell it was important to you, and I was like, I want anybody who's doing something that is unnecessary, like in the whole, like doing things is hard. Anything that you choose to do for yourself,
Right.
is like, by definition, not necessary, and takes a lot of work and vulnerability. And I want anybody who does that to feel like that was worthwhile and that was supported, and I'm going to keep doing it.
Right.
I try to do that in big and small ways for people often, like even down to, I'm almost never on Facebook. But my favorite thing to see on Facebook are people that I knew in high school who are doing something creative, doing something on their own because they love doing it. And just like look at it and appreciate it and support them on it, even though we probably didn't talk much then. We certainly don't talk now, but I want them to be like, somebody's paying attention, because you need that signal to keep going and do it. And honestly, I do it because I often don't feel it. You know, like I feel the same things of like, this thing I just did is awesome. Why aren't even my people showing up for me on this? And it starts to put a little chip on your shoulder, honestly. You know, like it's starting to become even more of a, I won't say like a negativity fueled thing, but like I definitely feel a growing sense of, all right, you keep ignoring what I'm doing. You go ahead and keep doing that, and you'll see. You'll all see.
Right. No, that's I have always been driven more by negativity than I have positivity. I'd say that right? Yeah. And I don't love it. But again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying. Like, I was never good at school, so I had a lot of people doubting me and whatever. But like, there's friends, family members, teachers. I remember all of their names. I remember the face that they made when they said that this wasn't a good idea. And it's probably not fair of me to keep that 15 years later, more than that maybe. But it still does the trick for me. Like, my high school principal died a couple years ago. And I was like, oof. That sucks. But like, I'm not over it still. Like, I'm not over the doubt that you had. I was hoping to be able to rub that in your face someday. But like, I knew that was the feeling that I had whenever I found that out. But I was like, again, that's not fair. Like, he tried to push, he tried to do all the right things.
He tried to do
it wasn't right for me specifically.
Right things, which as a kid we don't understand.
Right, exactly. So like, I don't. Right, and so I always held that against him. But like, even still to this day, like, he's up there on my list of people to prove wrong. I don't care if he's alive or dead, but it's there. But like, again, like, even family members where, you know, they start finding out like, oh, like, now Matt has a team of 8 people that are all like working on videos. And like, I have to try my hardest to not just be like, ha, like, I told you this is exactly what would happen. And again, that's how I operate. And maybe that again goes back to just the aggressive sports side of myself. But like, I wish it wasn't that way. Like, I love proving people right as well. Like, my mom, she always believed in me, and I love proving her right every day. But to me, it's just a little bit more fun.
There is a pleasure to it that you just don't get from anything else.
Right. And again, it's not like I would like be like, ha, or anything like that. It's just, I don't know. It's weird. But anyway, like, all that to say, I think that obviously the positive people in your life, the people that show up, I don't know, if you let them play a big role in kind of your success, again, just making sure you surround yourself with the right community, really. And there, like you were saying, Shelby, there are thousands of communities out there, and if one's not working, try the next one, because you'll find people that will support you. All right, all that being said, let's do some final thoughts. Shelby, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think just going off of that, I do have to say, kind of on your comment, Matt, of the ha, you know, I proved you wrong. I do have to say, I say this all the time. I do about 80% of everything I do is on spite. And I think that's a good thing to do, to be really honest. I mean, it's worked so far. But I think that they always say that we always remember the negative things more than we remember the positives.
Right.
And I do all the time. I remember because I had kind of a similar experience. I started when I was in college. I started out as a history and a business major, and I ended film and history.
Nice.
180. I went creative completely. And I remember when I was starting to make that switch of, this isn't going to work. You're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to be creative. And proving those people wrong. Finding communities that do support the work that I'm doing and the goals that you have. And being able to just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this and I believe in myself. You know, I think being able to learn those lessons and learn them well is the key.
Right. Jay, go ahead. Final thoughts. How do creatives live their best life?
Here's something I've been thinking about lately. When I was employed, which have been very small pockets of time in my life, there have been periods of time when I had expectations put on me from bosses, superiors, coworkers that felt insane. Like in terms of quality of output, level of output, timeline, time frame of output. And more times than not, I ended up achieving those insane expectations. I have been trying to be that person for myself as a self-employed person because I recognize I don't often push myself to tap into that same level of like that same gear. And I would bet I'm not alone in that, you know? So, you know, I constantly question myself, like, how much further ahead would I be if I had the same level of urgency or expectations for myself that sometimes bosses had for me? And it's important because results compound. So everything you do, every bit of progress that you make today, like you feel the compounding results of that for the rest of your career. So the faster you know, get certain things done, it really has a long-term impact. And I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
Nice. I would say, you know, a lot of the stuff that we already basically talked about. I think the most important thing is, I think it's okay to change directions, but I don't think it's okay to stop doing something that you really enjoy. It's fine if you're like, you know what, maybe I don't enjoy this. Like, you have no obligation to keep going. So it's okay to change your mind or change your direction. But if you believe in it yourself, and maybe there's that period of time between belief and confidence. You know, believe in yourself long enough and it will turn into confidence. And you will be able to, I don't know, make things happen in the world. I don't know, maybe that sounds like a t-shirt or a picture of one of those little posters on the wall kind of thing. Believe in yourself.
Bam.
But I think that's it. It's, you know, going back to what I was saying about the band thing, even if nobody's there, keep playing. Because worst case scenario, that's just good, solid practice. All right, Jay, where can people find out more info on you?
I am on the internet.
Nice.
You can read my newsletter at creatorscience.com, Creator Science, and find me on any social media at Jay Clouse.
Love it. All right, man. Jay, Shelby, it's been fun, and love you. Bye.
Bye.
The Command-Z Show is created by Made by Things. And if you have a question you would like us to discuss, you can send a message at cmdz.show. And if you like what you hear, leave a review. We'll see you next week with a brand new show.